dear viewers. I'm Quill Quickcard, and welcome back to Radical Dreamers, where last time we learned that Surge is not really that great in a fight. But that's okay. Maybe we won't have to do much fighting today. We went through the atrium and continued down the corridor before finding ourselves at a fork in the road. The corridor stretched off to the left and the right. So I am going to try going left. We continued down the corridor, eventually reaching an old, rather sturdy-looking door. Is it a large double door that's kind of reddish? Oh, no, it's not. Bloody marvelous. Not a bloody door with a bloody magic barrier on it. Wonder what's inside. The sixth sense tells me it ain't treasure, Kid whispered back to us as she examined the door. I suspect that this is the manor's dungeon, replied Magill, his eyes closed in concentration. I can hear the sound of someone moaning in the darkness on the other side. But there is nothing we can do, and thus it is of little concern to us now. Let us turn back. With no way of getting through the door, we retraced our steps down the corridor. Okay, and making our way back down the corridor, we came to a branch in the path. We don't want to go back to the atrium. The corridor also continued directly ahead, but the way was completely enshrouded in darkness. We are going to go straight on. Suddenly, Kid stopped in her tracks. Something's there! I quickly looked around to see what it was. There was nothing behind us or in front of us. Where could it be? And then just as I was trying to figure it out, the wall began moving. A rectangular section opened up and swung around, revealing two enormous goblins clinging to the back. It was like something from one of those stories about assassins sneaking around in old castles. You goblins! Screamed Kid. They definitely looked like goblins to me. Maybe a touch on the large side. There were 4 in total. The 2 in front of us and the 2 that had appeared behind us, cutting off our escape. Majel rushed toward the 2 behind us. Meanwhile, Kid leapt at the 2 in front, holding her knife in both hands. I drew my knife and rushed to Kid's side. Crash! The spiked ball of the goblin's morning star smashed into the ground, crushing the stone flooring. Kid nimbly leapt up into the air, evading the attack, and landing on the goblin's exposed hand. She swung upward toward the goblin's head, plunging her knife into its left eye. Then she flipped backwards and stood ready for the next attack. That was Kid's style. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. The next goblin charged in, swinging. Okay, I can't do what Kid did, I'm jumping back. I jumped back to keep my distance. For a moment I'd thought about copying Kid's trick, but I didn't have the confidence to pull it off. I was better off keeping an eye on my enemy and doing things my own way, though I did wish I could fight like her. The goblin pulled the iron ball out of the floor and came at me, swinging it overhead. I threw my knife, using the opportunity to steal... Okay, this one. I deflected the goblin's driving strike upward toward the ceiling and aimed an almighty blow at its face with my foot. My momentum unbroken, I turned full circle in the air and landed perfectly back on my feet, immediately moving in to thrust my dagger deep into its chest. Chunk! The blade sank in up to the hilt. What the hell? I leapt backwards, trying to put some space between us. Sensing danger, I jumped back. The goblin's hand grabbed uselessly at the air where I'd been standing. Had I been a moment later, it would have caught me. I was dealing with a monstrously persistent foe, but having spent the last of its strength, the goblin lost its balance and collapsed to the floor, where it succumbed to its wounds. I realized then that everything was quiet, and the fighting had ended. That must have been the last goblin. Good job! I actually killed a goblin without getting hurt. Whew. I'd taken a few knocks, but I was alright. A scrape or 2 wouldn't stop me. Ah, please, I'm fine. Maybe you ain't such a drongo after all. Just goes to show any old weirdo can make something of themselves if they put their mind to it. Kid's eyes glinted with mischief. We continued down the dark, dank corridor until some stairs leading downward finally came into view. Okay. Slowly, we crept down the staircase, descending deeper into the shadows as we went. At the bottom, we found ourselves at another intersection. The dim, narrow passageway branched left and right. Okay, I am going to go right. We followed the corridor for a while before coming across a small door. "Get a whiff of that! Something smells good," whispered Kid, sniffing at the air. Oh yeah, we're absolutely going in. We opened the door. "Blimey, this is a small kitchen. Must be for the servants," commented Medjo. I scanned our surroundings. A basin for washing dishes, cooking utensils, some food made ready for tomorrow, and a mousetrap. It looked like any other commoner's kitchen. Kid walked over to a large pot filled with food and peered inside. "Looks like tomorrow's lunch. Want to try some, Serge?" I think if I eat, I get healed. But I think I'm okay for now. I respectfully declined. I made my excuses as politely as I could. Kid clicked her tongue in disappointment. "Alrighty, you want some, Meg?" "No." Well, fine. Well, if you're afraid to try it, I ain't touching it either," she said, turning her back on the pot. Suddenly, a little voice rang out. "You there, the young man with the braid." Kid froze. "Oi, who you called a bloke?" Kid barked angrily in the direction the voice was coming from. A mouse was looking at us, with eyes like saucers, from the inside of a mousetrap hanging from the wall in a corner of the room. "Oh, I am sorry. You're a young lady, I see." The mouse bowed its head in apology. "But please, kind young lady, you must hear me out." The mouse put its paws together and stared pleadingly at Kid. "I left the nest to find food for my mother, but as you can see, I managed to get myself caught in a trap. If you leave me here, I will surely be eaten by goblins." Kid eyed the little creature suspiciously. "I beg of you, please, free me from this trap. My mother is sick, and she'll be terribly worried about what has become of me." The mouse was clearly begging for its life, but there was also an odd little glint in its eye. Kid shrugged inside. "Fine, guess we can't just leave you to rot. Hold still, let's get you out of there." She lifted the trap down onto the floor and opened the door. The mouse bounded happily out from inside. The mouse gave a wicked chuckle. "You poor naive fool!" Suddenly its body began to balloon massively in size. "Ah. Bugger me! A griffin!" The enormous creature stared balefully down at us. "Idiot humans! My mother is not sick, but yours will be when she sees what I've done to you. You dirty little swine! And after all I've done for you!" Kid's face was red with anger. The griffin gave an almighty cry and leapt right at us. Its razor-sharp talons sliced through the air. Jump away with a backstep. Caught off guard, I tried my best to dodge the attack, but the blow never came as the griffin suddenly lost its balance and came crashing to the ground. "Oh, bother. I'm too hungry to even fight properly." What on earth? I breathed a sigh of relief, running a hand down my chest. "All right, little mouse. Now it's time for the real show to begin." Kid walked up to the griffin, cracking her knuckles. "Please, kindly young lady, this is all a misunderstanding, a terrible misunderstanding." Panicking, the creature leapt to its feet. You can't kill me. I have useful information. If you let me go, I promise I'll tell you everything I know. Everything! Wow. Okay, points to this creature for immediately recognizing it's screwed. Still, not exactly a good start to our trusting relationship, I guess. Yeah, I know how much a promise from the likes of you is worth. Kid took another step toward the griffin, not skipping a beat. Ah, please! Kid kept on coming. The griffin kept on shrinking away. Enough! Major called for Kid to stop. Let's hear it. Oh, thank you, kind sir. The griffin was beside itself with relief. Spoil my fun, why don't you? Grumbled Kid, pouting as she turned away. Listen well, O merciful Savior. Right thrice, left twice, right twice. Should you find yourself trapped in one of Link's swirling snares, remember my words. Okay, so right 3, left 2, right 2. Okay, fair enough. With that, the griffin returned to its mouse-like form and disappeared into a small hole in the wall. Trapped in Link's snares? As if I'd be thick enough to walk into one of his traps. I think we're like 3 traps. 3 or 4 traps we've gotten caught in, Kid. You need to tone down the confidence. Let's get out of here. We've wasted enough time already. Kid turned on her heel and made for the door. We left the kitchen. Leaving the room behind us, we took a right turn down the corridor. We followed it for a while before coming to an intersection. So left is going to be the stairway we came on. We want to go forward. We continued on down the corridor until it ended in a large door covered in scratches and other odd marks. Above the door was a wooden plate. It bore the legend, Guard Room, in elaborate calligraphy. Well, reckon this might be where the key to the door upstairs. No getting past that bloody magic barrier without it. Kid pressed an ear to the door and listened carefully. Doesn't sound like anyone's in there, she whispered. We went inside. Kid opened the door. The room had seemed completely silent from the outside, and so we had thought it would be empty. But inside, there was a lone goblin. It was sitting in a chair with a book in its hand. A light steam drifted from the teacup on the table in front of it, and with it a delicate aroma. Oh. The goblin peered at us curiously over its spectacles. There was something different about this one. I could tell as much at a glance. Oh, heavens! How rare it is to have guests! Heavens! Heavens, how well spoken for a goblin! I could only feel dread and suspicion at the sight of him nonetheless. Sorry, mate, but we're not your guests. Cough up the key to the dungeon if you want to live. Kid slammed her knife into the table to illustrate her point. But the goblin didn't so much as flinch. Aha! You must be Kid. What a pleasure this is. I have always so wanted to meet you. Why, you're even more ravishing than the rumors would. Before the goblin could finish, Kid's knife flew through the air. With a quick flick of his wrist, the goblin caught the blade with the back of his book, a mere inch from his face. I see that your approach is as radical as the name of your merry band would suggest, the goblin said, pulling the knife free and handing it back to Kid. She took it without a word, but her gaze had changed. She was like a cat, cautiously studying its prey. And I was just getting to the good part, too. Ah, well, I suppose I shall have to give up on ever finishing it now. The goblin casually flung the book over his shoulder and into a nearby bin. Allow me to introduce myself, if I may. I am Grismeld, and I am the guard on watch. No need to stand. Please, do take a seat. You're welcome to tea, of course. The goblin beckoned us to sit down. Did he mean to poison us? If I may. If I may. Majel calmly took a seat, ignoring the obvious suspicion in the air. I am going to sit next to Kid. I'm gonna look to Kid. Confused by how at home Majel seemed, I looked to Kid. She remained where she stood, seemingly unsure what to make of the goblin, but apparently quite sure she wasn't going to sit down. I decided to stay standing as well. The goblin poured 3 cups of tea. Here you are. Without the slightest hint of hesitation, Majel took his teacup and lifted it to his lips. He sipped, and then placed the cup back on its saucer. Hylmaelin tea. Not a blend I expected to find here. Ah, what a pleasure it is to encounter a fellow connoisseur. Yes, it's a rare blend, and one enjoyed mainly by the noble classes. I couldn't believe the conversation I was hearing, but I also couldn't help wondering what this rare tea might taste like. My eyes rested on the cup that had been poured for me. I'm going to drink it. I took a seat and picked up the teacup. This is great, I blurted out. I'd never had such a delicious brew in my entire life. My aches and pains faded away. Oh, did that heal me? Huh. I glanced over at Kid, who was blowing maniacally at the liquid in her cup. Manically at the liquid in her cup. She was not breathing on it maniacally. I'd forgotten that she was paranoid about burning her mouth on things. Now that we're comfortable, let's get down to brass tacks, as they say. I do indeed have the key to the dungeon, as you surmised, but you will also be aware that I cannot simply give it away. I glanced over to Kid again. Typical. She wasn't listening to a word Grismeld was saying. She was still huffing and puffing at her tea. It seemed it would be up to me to respond. I suppose that means you want something in return. You'd like to know what I want. I want your heads. Or rather, I'm sure that's what my employer would have me say. But no, I have no such barbarous aspirations. Furthermore, I doubt I'd be a match for you. Grismeld chuckled as he said this. What I live for is the joy of conversation, which I fear my compatriots are ill-equipped to supply. Perhaps you might have 1 or 2 ripping yarns to share. Grinning, he added, I'm sure notorious thieves such as yourselves must have had more than a few thrilling tales up your sleeves. So he wanted to hear a story. That seemed a more than fair price to pay for the key. I closed my eyes and thought. Aha! I know just the story. How did it begin? One night, a young girl was walking alone in the forest. And then... okay. How do I want to say this? She was searching for a golden sunflower, the only way to cure her mother's sickness. Then, the poor girl went without food for 3 days and 3 nights. The fragments I remembered seemed about right. There was only one way the story could end. I took a breath and began my tale. One night a young girl was walking alone in the forest. She was searching for a golden sunflower, the only way to cure her mother's illness. But poor girl went without food for 3 days and 3 nights. And then in her moment of darkest despair, she saw a brilliant light. It was none other than the golden sunflower she sought. The young girl gratefully pocketed the sunflower's seeds. These will surely save my mother, she thought. But it was all a dream. With a smile on her face, the girl drifted off and dreamed forevermore. That's terribly depressing. What a terrible story to tell. It was beautiful, murmured Kid, wiping a tear from her eye. Okay, apparently Kid liked it. Grismeld frowned. Not quite what I was expecting, and not the most riveting of tales. But I suppose it will do. The key, as promised. I took it from Grismeld's hand. Something didn't seem right, though. Was he really going to give it up so easily? Was it really all right to trust such a strange goblin? Grismeld seemed to notice my suspicion. He leaned back into his chair, looking up at the ceiling. When I was a young tyro, a braver, stupider goblin, I once served General Viper, who was the lord of this manor until his betrayal by Lord Lynx. Despite my boorishness, Lady Riddell always saw something in me worthy of praise. Wait, Riddell? What's Lynx's adopted daughter got to do with anything? Oh, you didn't know? Riddell's real father was none other than General Viper himself. What? Lord Lynx spared Lady Riddell's life so as not to snuff out that of the frozen flame. It's an uncanny stone, you see, has a life of its own, and some kind of spiritual bond with Lady Riddell. If only there was some way that I could free milady from this manor. Alas, I alone am powerless to do any such thing. Of course, I would have no qualms if, say, you were to topple the usurper. I assume you intend to. Slay the old beast, I mean. It was a strange inquiry to make so casually. Well, if it comes to it. I was more than a little taken aback by the directness of Grismeld's question. I'd never expected to find one of Lynx's own guards asking me something like that. Suddenly I was shoved aside. Not if it comes to it! We're gonna kill him tonight! And kill him good! It was Kid, of course. And, in exchange, I'll have some more of that tea to take with us. Kid held out her hand before Grismeld could offer an answer. I suppose I have a bag I can share. Grismeld shuffled awkwardly in his seat as he retrieved it. As ever, I was impressed at how Kid's uncompromising attitude and willingness to speak her mind seemed to always get her what she wanted. Bonza, sit tight and lead the rest of us, mate. Stowing the bag in her pocket, Kid took the joke. You can trust me. I'm a girl of me word. That might have been the biggest lie she'd ever told. Right, let's get moving. She made for the door with a spring in her step. We left the room and Grismeld behind. Alright, so I guess now it's back to the dungeon. So we're back in the corner, so we want to go right up the stairs. And then just straight to the end of the hallway, ignoring the other passage. And that way will lead to the dungeon. Yep, following the corner, the left would take us back to the atrium. We want to go straight toward the cell. We continued down the corridor, eventually reaching an old, rather sturdy-looking door. Right, the key we got from that creepy old goblin should do the trick. Kid slipped the key into the lock. The heavy door groaned slightly, as it slowly swung open. Clammy air rose up around our feet, as if crawling blindly through the darkness. This didn't seem like the kind of place anyone in their right mind would visit voluntarily. We pushed the heavy iron door the rest of the way open and stepped into the darkness. There was a row of cells, all locked behind iron bars. 1, 2...
Gulliver, Melgid, Zoranda, forgive me, please. Please forgive me.
We heard a voice from the third cell, whimpering and crying pathetically. I strained my eyes to look inside. Faintly in the darkness, I could see something that looked like a man sitting on the floor. So this was the source of the voice.
"Oi, you all right, mate?"
Kid called out to the figure.
"Forgive me. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. The Dragoons never deserved this. General, Lady Riddell, oh, forgive me, I beg of you."
The old man didn't seem to respond to us at all. He only sat facing the wall, begging forgiveness for who knew what.
"Hello, can you hear me?"
asked Kid, trying again. "There'll be no getting through to him. His real self will have long since retreated inside the shell he has created," said Majel, cutting her off.
"Shell?"
"Shell? What do you mean?" I asked. "He has built a shell around the core of his psyche in order to shield himself from the truth. He is running from something. Something terrible. He has seen something, or been through something, or has done something. And so he has created his own world on the inside as a final refuge. The outside world lost to him forevermore." I looked at Majel in surprise. I had detected a hint of unspoken sadness in his words. And for some reason, he was looking at Kid. Watching over her, she stared at the man in the cell. Seeming to notice my gaze, Majel turned back to face me, assuming his usual emotionless expression once more. "We live in a world of sorrow and foolishness. It's only inevitable that some would try to escape it." But despite his hard words, his eyes retained a certain softness, his steely gaze giving way to a gentle light. "Do you understand?" "You know, I think I do." I gave a slightly evasive answer. "You seem confused. I don't blame you. You'll come to understand eventually." Majel looked at me and Kid. What was all that about, I wondered.
"We're not going to get much out of him. He's miles away. Let's just leave him be and try someplace else."
Kid made for the door of the dungeon. "Wait," called Majel. "We must find some way to get this man to speak."
"What for? I mean, he's speaking already, just none of it makes sense. What are you after?"
"Some things he said piqued my curiosity. He mentioned the Dragoons, and Riddell too."
"So, you say the Dragoons are ancient history?"
snapped Kid.
"Besides, how can we trust anything he said? He's clearly gone off his rocker."
She had a point. The old man had long since cut his ties to the real world. What did Majel expect him to say? Without missing a beat, Majel replied, "We simply have to bring him back to reality."
"And how are we going to do that? You want me to do a little dance for him or something? See if that gets his motor going?"
"Yeah, please don't." No, please don't do that." The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them.
"What are you saying?"
Her eyes narrowed threateningly. You don't think anyone would want to see me dance, is that it? What? No! Completely the opposite, in fact. Actually, ignore me. Nay, she'd be good. Enlighten me, why don't you? He's right. It won't work. And just like that, Kid's fist was flying toward Magel's face instead of mine. He dodged the blow with ease and carried on as if nothing had happened. We must break through the shell he has created and drag him back into the real world. And did I? Really? Yawns. Again with the yawns. Why? It is 10:45 in the morning. I slept for 9 hours. I have had my tea. How is it always with the yawning? I think it just happens where I have to read a lot. Something that will reach him even through the barrier he has erected. Yeah, where are we gonna find this key? Asked Kid suspiciously. I don't know, came Magel's simple reply. But there is someone in this manor who can tell us. You don't mean... You're not talking about Riddell, are you? I am, Magel replied with a nod. All right, fine. Don't know what the heck you expect her to tell us, though. Kid turned on her heel and made for the door. We left the gibbering old man in the dungeon, alone with his sorrow. I followed Kid and Magel back out into the corridor. A scream pierced the darkness, turning my blood to ice. I realized then that a pair of crazed, blood-red eyes was staring into the depths of my soul. It was a griffin! Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but this game actually has random encounters. In a panic, I tried to slip the knife from my belt, but before I could draw my weapon, the griffin had spread its powerful wings and swooped toward me with an almighty screech. I was knocked back and sent rolling across the ground. I gasped with pain as the wind was knocked out of me. Serge, you okay? Every nerve in my body was screaming with pain. I held back the groans and staggered to my feet. I looked up to see the massive griffin in front of me. Its hellish red eyes stared down its beak. It was going to attack. What could I do? Jump back! Almost by reflex, I jumped back. But the griffin's talons were soon followed by its head. Ugh! A sharp pain ripped through my waist. Clutching my wounded stomach, I did my best to regain my footing and turned to face the griffin again. As the beast's mad red eyes glared at me, I desperately tightened my grip on my knife. Attack! I reversed my grip on my knife and plunged it into the griffin's neck with all my might. Grah! The griffin's body contorted with agony. Driven mad with rage, the griffin shook its head this way and that. I quickly pulled my knife out from its neck and rolled away to put some space between us. I quickly got back to my feet and readied myself to attack again. As the beast's mad red eyes glared at me, I desperately tightened my grip on my knife. Attack again! Yes! Get the neck! Do it! Get down! Get down, Serge! Shouted Major from behind me. Panicked, I dropped to the floor, and not a moment too soon. Almost instantly, a blazing fireball sailed right over my head. It crashed into the griffin and exploded into an almighty conflagration. Grah! The griffin writhed in the flames, shrieking madly, and then it collapsed to the floor, completely overcome by the blaze. We'd done it! We'd actually managed to defeat a griffin! More like Majel had managed to defeat a griffin. Whew! I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by what I'd just been through, but glad it was all over. Whew. I'd taken a few knocks, but I was all right. A scrape or two wouldn't stop me. All right, so I'm back to being as wounded as I was before the goblin tea. Not bad, Serge, not bad at all. Didn't know you had it in you. There was a mischievous glint in Kid's eyes as she rewarded me with a few rare words of praise. All right, I think Kid's liking me more and more, and that's good. That's important. Okay, so now, at this point, we need to go to Riddell. So that means we have to cross the atrium and keep going through the hall and then take the door on the right, I think. But I'm afraid that's going to have to wait until the next one.